years old.
The heat is most definitely on in this episode of Revisited, as we're looking back on a quintessential piece of 1980s action/comedy movie making that helped to launch the career of American funnyman Eddie Murphy into the stratosphere. That's right, folk, with the much anticipated fourth entry in the series on the horizon, we're taking a retrospective look at the Axel F infused goodness that is Beverly Hills Cop.
After you.
You guys are so sweet, you know that?
Okay, I guess part 4 isn't necessarily much anticipated, but Eddie Murphy has had somewhat of a career resurgence in recent times.
But if you had told me 30 years ago that I would be this boring, stay-at-home, house dad, and Bill Cosby would be in jail, even I would have took that bet.
And apart from a slightly tame and disappointing coming to America, and the relative appeal of You People, he's made a positive return to the spotlight. For now though, sit back, enjoy your prawn salad sandwich, and pop a couple of bananas in a tailpipe, as we look back on the endlessly quotable Eddie Murphy classic, Beverly Hills Cop.
Boss, the chief ain't true at all that. You still got a little ass there.
1984, the golden year that gave us melty-faced dream-bothering psychopaths, time-travelling cyborgs, giant sandworms, malevolent, yet hilarious gremlins, plus the start of the global phenomenon that was Ghostbusters, to name but a few. I could go on to list many more big screen classics that are still much loved and rewatched today. However, some restraint is in order, as it also helped us get acquainted with a character and a star on the rise in Eddie Murphy that is not just unforgettable, but iconic in its own right. There was even a time in which Beverly Hills Cop was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time.
Get the fuck out of here! Somebody else, I said it myself.
A stat which may surprise some. However, the movie deserves any accolades thrown at it for many reasons. It features many of the classic tropes of the action comedy genre, the fish out of water aspect, the beyond endearing buddy cop trio of Murphy's Axel Foley, alongside the sometimes hapless, well, quite often hapless, Rosewood and Taggart, played by the excellent Judge Reinhold and John Ashton respectively. The plot of the movie sees Murphy's wisecracking, trigger-mouthed Detroit police officer, who travels to Beverly Hills to investigate the murder of his old friend. Along the way, he encounters a wonderful array of colourful characters.
Go ahead, take those bananas.
Great set pieces, and violence that set the benchmark for such movies to often imitate long after its release. It was way back in 1977 that the concept for the movie was first developed. The sadly late Don Simpson was a Paramount executive at the time and dreamed up an idea that saw a cop from East LA transferred to Beverly Hills. The movie was originally titled Beverly Drive, and screenwriter Danilo Bach initially delivered a script that leaned heavily more into action, and the project subsequently faltered. However, buoyed by the success of the Adrian Lyne dance drama Flashdance, Simpson saw the opportunity to resurrect his fish out of water cop flick and brought on Daniel Petrie Jr. to rewrite the script. The studio loved the humour that Petrie Jr. had added to the script, and the character was also rewritten with the name Axel Ellie, rather than Bach's initial moniker for the character, which was Ellie Axel. To be honest, neither of those reverse names scream out tough, wisecracking, all-action cop, so the name they eventually went with, Axel Foley, is a much better fit for the character. With the film ready to go into production, the studio had to choose just who would fill the shoes of Axel Foley and who would take on directorial duties also. Although you can't imagine anybody but Eddie Murphy playing the role, it's fascinating to look back on who they initially approached for the character. One such name, that would be a ridiculous suggestion nowadays, but albeit a solid choice in the 80s, was Mickey Rourke. His star was on the rise thanks to early roles in movies such as 1981's Body Heat and Rumblefish from 1983. He had great movie star presence, good looks, had a roguish charm that could have added a different, but admittedly intriguing spin on the character. He even signed a holding contract with the studio for $400,000, but after the film's pre-production dragged on longer than expected, he left to take on another project. Another, and arguably an even bigger movie star, was also attached to the project once Rourke had left, the legendary Italian stallion himself, Sylvester Stallone, who dramatically rewrote the script so that all the humour was gone and it was back to being an all-out action epic. Stallone also rewrote several of the main characters, changing Billy Rosewood to Simmons and killing him off halfway through the narrative in one of the action scenes. He also changed the name of the main character to Axel Cabretti, and has since described that his vision for the movie would have looked like the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan on the beaches of Normandy. Believe it or not, the finale was me in a stolen Lamborghini playing chicken with an oncoming freight train being driven by the ultra slimy bad guy. That's not a bad concept for an action movie, to be fair, but looking back on what the movie eventually became, it's a massive departure from what the studio were looking for. In fact, producer Don Simpson was vocal about not wanting to go ahead with Stallone's script, in which the main character spent too long soaping down his muscles, an image you could most definitely associate with the actor. Also, according to legend, Simpson managed to get Stallone off the project by sending him to Switzerland, and in the meantime Simpson and fellow producer Jerry Bruckheimer persuaded Eddie Murphy to take the role, and Stallone went on to star in the less than stellar Rhinestone in 1984 instead.
Thank you and good night.
Despite Murphy ultimately being offered the role, several other names were attached to the project that are worth mentioning, including Al Pacino, Richard Pryor, James Caan, and Indy himself, Harrison Ford, who also reportedly turned down the role. It's not just the title star who makes the movie so memorable, however, as Murphy is backed up by a tremendous cast consisting of the aforementioned Judge Reinhold and John Ashton as Beverly Hills Cops Rosewood and Taggart, who proved the perfect straight-laced foil to Murphy's snarky Foley. We also get RoboCop veteran Ronnie Cox as Lieutenant Bobbermill, Lisa Eilbacher as Foley's former acquaintance Jenny Summers, Stephen Burkoff as slimy bad guy Victor Maitland, plus Better Call Saul legend Jonathan Banks as henchman Zack. Rounding out the main players is the superb Gilbert R. Hall as Foley's take-no-bullshit superior.
You mind telling me where the you come off going undercover without authorization from me? What the is this all about?
As well as Aliens and more recently Stranger Things star Paul Reiser.
Trying to tell you.
Jeffrey, this is none of your business.
This is not my locker.
Plus, the unforgettable Bronson Pinchot as a scene-stealing Serge.
Get the out of here. No, I cannot. It's serious.
While the process of finding the star for the movie had been something of a chore for the studio, the process of hiring the film's director was somewhat more straightforward. Martin Scorsese was offered the gig, but turned it down as he felt the concept for the movie was too similar to that of 1968's Coogan's Bluff. And even body horror maestro David Cronenberg was offered the chance to direct the movie. Ultimately, it was the great Martin Brest who was hired to helm the movie, and despite his dismissal from War Games in 1983, he delivered exactly what was required for both the film's star and the studio.
This is nice.
There's a scene towards the beginning of Beverly Hills Cop that helps to establish the key relationship between Axel Foley and his Beverly Hills counterparts that sums up what works so well about the movie. After being arrested for allegedly breaking into Victor Maitland's office, in a scene that ends with one of the funniest lines in the movie,
"Disturbing the peace, I got thrown out of a window. What's the f***ing charge for getting pushed out of a moving car, huh? Jaywalking? This is bull.
Foley, Rosewood and Taggart meet for the first time and sparks fly, ending with Taggart punching Foley in the gut. It's the perfect setup for the relationship between the characters later in the movie, not just because it establishes just how easily Foley gets under the skin of his usually calm and collected counterparts, but also because Taggart's forced apology shows just how much of a fish out of water Foley really is in Beverly Hills.
Look, where I'm from, cops don't file charges against other cops. No, I don't want to do that.
After Axel Foley's friend is murdered in cold blood in Detroit, he heads to Beverly Hills to track down the killer, after hearing from his former friend about a security job he had there, courtesy of a mutual acquaintance, Jenny Summers. Mike had also shown Axel some German bearer bonds he had acquired, which ultimately led to his cold-blooded killing outside of Foley's apartment. After Foley reluctantly agrees with Inspector Todd that he'll leave the case alone and get his head wound treated at the hospital, he betrays this trust and goes after some retribution. What follows is not only an iconic, violent, and extremely funny movie, but one that holds up pretty well a few decades later. Yeah, there may not be the flashy quick cuts utilised by many recent action movies, but this works in the film's favour. Each scene is crafted in a measured but very efficient way, with the characters and situations they find themselves in given room to breathe, and the gags when they arrive come thick and fast with their natural setup. The action is also well handled, especially an opening truck chase with Foley hanging off the back of his speeding juggernaut as it carves its way through the city streets, demolishing cars and almost pedestrians as it goes. Director Brest keeps the action beats coming efficiently, and although the violence is blunt and effective, it serves as the perfect foil to the comedy. Murphy's relationship with Rosewood and Taggart is a touching highlight, and there's a nice moment of their two worlds colliding, with the Beverly Hills Cops being roasted by their colleagues for the banana in the tailpipe incident, just as Murphy had been by his own counterparts for messing up the drugs bust at the start of the movie. The real beating heart of the film then is the key trio of Foley and the initially hapless but ultimately indispensable Rosewood and Taggart. Murphy brings his trademark slick and witty sense of humour to Axel Foley, not giving a flying about bending the rules or lying about interviewing famous pop stars to get a room in a luxury hotel. However, it's his interactions with the seemingly moronic Rosewood and the stiff as a board Taggart where the movie really shines. Also, we can't write a retrospective review on that movie without mentioning the amazing synth score, Axel F, by Harold Faltermeyer, that pops up in key moments in the film. In fact, the soundtrack for the movie, and Axel F by Faltermeyer in particular, was a major contributing factor to the success of the movie overall. The composer was originally best known for his work on the Top Gun soundtrack, as well as the music and score for the Fletch films, starring Chevy Chase. Axel F proved so popular that it reached #1 in several charts around the world and is easily one of the most memorable elements of the movie. The track was originally written solely for a small part of the film, but once Faltermeyer realised the potential for the catchy tune, he persuaded the studio to use it as the main overarching theme throughout the film. Beverly Hills Cop hit theatres on December the 5th, 1984 at 1,532 cinemas in the United States, opening at #1 at the box office with a gross of $15,214,805 over its first 5 days of release. The movie stayed at #1 for 13 consecutive weeks and eventually tied with the Dustin Hoffman comedy Tootsie for the most weeks at the top spot. It eventually grossed an impressive total of $234,760,478. And, as we touched upon a little earlier in this retrospective, it was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, until eventually being surpassed by The Matrix Reloaded in 2003. Reviews of the movie were largely positive, and it currently holds an approval rating of 83% from 54 critics on Rotten Tomatoes. The initial response to the movie was also positive, with the New York Times stating that Beverly Hills Cop finds Eddie Murphy doing what he does best, playing the shrewdest, hippest, fastest talking underdog in a rich man's world. Eddie Murphy knows exactly what he's doing, and he wins at every turn. Also full of praise was Time magazine, who wrote that Eddie Murphy exuded the kind of cheeky, cocky charm that has been missing from the screen since Cagney was a pup, snarling his way out of the ghetto. The role of Axel Foley is arguably what Murphy is most famous for, unless you're under the age of 10 and have a penchant for talking donkeys, that is.
You might have seen a house fly, maybe even a super fly, but I bet you ain't never seen a donkey fly.
As well as an excellent box office and critical praise, the movie also won several awards and was also nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards. As always, let us know your thoughts on Beverly Hills Cop in the comments section. And keep a lookout for more from Axel Foley and friends as we dive into the inevitable sequel in our next episode here on Revisited. Were they able to capture the same humour and wild spirit in part 2? Stay tuned to find out, movie fans, and we'll see you next time.